Hi, Katie Odell back with CW Shop Talk from the Crystal Wine. Today's discussion is going to center on the difference between tarot cards and oracle cards, and there is a little bit of a difference. Essentially, cards have been used for divination, at least as far as we know, since the Middle Ages. In Italy, they were using a precursor, let's say, to the regular tarot deck that we know today, and that was like in the 1400s. I think they used them as playing cards and divination tools. And then by late 1700s, a man called Jean Baptiste Alouette wrote a book called Key to the Tarot, or Pictorial Key to the Tarot, and he had redesigned the original deck a little bit and gave it its own or his own interpretations, or consolidated the interpretations of the day. I really couldn't tell you which. And that was the deck used then for the next 200 years when people wanted to do card divinations. Then move forward to the 19th or 20th century. In 1909, Arthur Wade and Pamela Coleman Smith came up with the Rider Waite deck. And this is the deck most people know today, with the symbolism had been changed. The pictures are more colorful. They're just, more full bodied, shall we say. And they had made a few other little changes along the way. And it isn't the Pope, because in the older decks were like the Pope and the Papist. And now you have the Hierophant and the High Priestess. They were getting away from a lot of the original Catholic connotations to some of these, I guess. Anyway, they held the patent for a long, long time. And then in 1966, the patent expired in the United States, and it wasn't until the late 90s and 2000s before it expired around the world, depending on the country's laws. And what happened was everybody and their brother who could draw and or had any leanings in the metaphysical realm came up with their own new tarot decks. You've got Shadowscapes, you've got, there we go, and Wildwood Tarot, Robin Hood Tarot, Gothic Tarot, Everyday Witch Tarot, you name it, there's a tarot card along those lines. Now, the original tarot decks have the same, like this one here is a tarot for beginners. This is basically your Rider Waite Smith deck. See those pictures, the cups, the wands, the hearts, everything's, this is the one everyone's more familiar with because this is the one that's been out there the longest. But when you get into some of these other decks with the newer interpretations, they're all based on the original tarot here, or basically they're all based on the Rider Waite Smith deck, to be honest. But they change things a little. It's like the Hermetic Tarot. This is based on the secret workings of the Golden Dawn. And so was the original Rider Waite deck, I believe. It's just that this one's a little more Gothic in that design. Uh, Shadowscapes is filled with fairies. Aren't they pretty? This is a very popular deck just because it is. I find it hard to work with because everything's so small in the pictures. I'm getting older. I need bigger things that are right in my face. If you are into nature, the Wildwood Tarot might attract you. The cards they use, everything's based, as you can see, on imagery from the forest and natural world. It doesn't matter. All the tarot decks are going to mean the same. They may change some of the wording. They're going to change a little bit of they're definitely going to change the descriptions, but they're going to change. Sometimes they change the basic suits from cups and wands and pentacles and swords to bows and arrows and stones, or, they'll just pick another element and say, this is equal to that, therefore. They're still going to mean the same. So when you're doing a tarot reading, your first card is they're all going to have the major arcana, would be the magician. Okay, this is, now in some, they might call him something else, but it'll still be a man standing there with the power of life and death, or to create or to manifest magic. He's still going to be that. Symbolism is still going to mean the same thing for most people. And as far as using a tarot deck, it doesn't matter. Whichever one draws you. because they're all nothing but tools. They're not the divination. They're not magic. The cards in here are not the magic part. The part that's in you, your intuitive nature. The more you play with your cards, the more you practice with your cards, the more you're going to learn your cards, and the more intuitive you will get the feeling. And you'll be able to do readings in a more stylized format, or at least they'll flow from you easier. You'll be able to look at a spread that has 10 cards out there and think, ugh, there's a lot of cups, so that must mean this is a question of emotions. This is a question of the heart. This is something, or somebody's hurting. If you see swords are in there, it's like, okay, they've got a broken heart. It doesn't have to be the Three of Swords showing you a broken heart, but maybe you have the Lover's card followed by the Ten of Swords, and that means, oh Lord, somebody left somebody, there was a divorce, there was something heartbreaking about this whole thing. Like I said, once you get to know your cards, you'll be able to pick up on what they're trying to tell you. And the only difference between the tarot deck, which is basically your traditional decks that all have very similar meanings to the same sets of cards, four suits in the minor arcana and the major arcana, which are more like the fateful cards that they all have their own meaning, but they're all similar. The star in one deck is a star, in the other deck is a star, in the next deck it might be painted different, and it'll have slightly different influence on the way you feel about it when you look at it, but it's still the star card. When you move into the oracle decks, they're more open, I feel, to interpretation. They don't have any set scheme. It's like if all the different tarot cards are all based on this deck, the enchanted oracle. The oracle cards are based on whoever and whatever wrote them. Whoever wrote them. Some people will buy like this deck. Let's look at it. Okay, the Enchanted Oracle. This is essentially magical creatures, let's say. Elves, fairies, mermaids, dragons. But they're all very stylistic. They're sort of gothic to me. Shadow Weaver. And what happens like with a deck like this, usually if you get them in these big box sets, you get a nice big book to read from. Ta-da! And when you can open it up and look things up, let's say you draw a card. This one is from the Enchanted Oracle. It's called Maiden Moon. All right. When you look at the picture, with Oracle decks, you're invited to look at the picture. What does it mean to you? Look at the moon in the background. Look at the girl looking over the shoulder. What kind of emotion does she pull from you? Now, they're going to tell you. They're going to describe, all the books give you a good description. Here it's saying timing, as they say, is everything. We pay attention to time in so many ways. We acknowledge the importance of large chunks of time, such as childhood or summertime. We celebrate birthdays, blah, 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 blah. It goes on for another page. And then it gets down to, what does that card mean now that you've told me all about time and life and cycles? Whatever you are thinking of doing, pay attention to when you plan on doing it. The matter at hand is particularly sensitive to timing. This may be either lunar timing or circumstantial timing. Whichever it is, do pick carefully in order to ensure the best possible success. So what they're getting at in the gist of this card, the symbolism, is they're doing lunar cycles. That's why they threw the moon in there and called it Maiden of the Moon. It's about time. And once you get that in your head, once you've been playing with them long enough, when you look at her, you'll know time. And it means whatever this person's planning on doing, this is a time-sensitive matter. And you will, incorporate that into the reading. Now, they're all different. And they have different layouts. With tarot decks, they have a traditional Celtic cross and this one and that one. And there's a couple traditional layouts there, but each oracle deck will have its own. It's like you can just, ooh, white magic. I like that one. They got so many pretty cards in here. They might have a 4-card layout. They might have a 6-card layout. They might have a 3-card layout. And what you would do is pull your cards and lay them down and read them like past, present, and future. Combine the symbolism of all three cards, and you've got a reading of, well, it looks like you were doing this and then you wanted to do that. And this is how it's going to turn out. That's the only difference with Oracle decks, and there's so many of them. This used to be Iris's favorite, Fairies of the Oracle. The Fairies Oracle. I'm really reading well today, aren't I? Oh, this one comes with a really nice book. It's the best book in the lot. It's hardcover. You don't see that too often. And they give you an entire several chapters explaining how to do this, what they stand for, what they mean. And you would go with, oh, let's see, this one was the Guardian of the Gate, and that was card number 3. See this one? Okay. Guardian of the Gate. It's a passages to new life, openings, and gatekeeping, meaning its beginnings, all right? Now, they give you a whole page here talking about the principal task of the guardian is to facilitate the passage from one realm to another and to block the passage of that which is not ready to pass. Oh, that's not crazy. Anyhow, then you get to the next page and it's going to tell you about what the card indicates in a reading. Drawing this card indicates that a passage is being made to the beginnings of something new in our lives. It speaks of new opportunities and new openings. Passing through this gate may lead to a physical journey, a mental or emotional one, or a journey of spirit. It always leads to adventure. This gateway will also lead to change in our lives. The passage through such a gate changes us. Now, when this would come up in a reading, that means whatever was happening, and then you got this change, say that was in the middle and that was the present. That meant something's coming up that's going to bring this person a change in their life. And then the cards that would follow would tell you in what area of life maybe. It might be an emotional change, it might be a physical move, it might be this, it might be that. But it always indicates change. And after a while, like I said, when you're playing with your cards, every time you do a layout, you're going to be looking up what it means. You have to. It's the only way you learn. After a while, it starts to sink in your brain. And then it just becomes you can look at it and you know it's changed and you don't have to look it up. That's the trick. The basics of most Oracle decks um, are usually, now not all of them, but most of them give you the symbolism within the card. Now these decks here are a little more ethereal, I will say, so it isn't so obvious. Decks that are more obvious, ones that I kind of like, tend to be, okay, the Lenormand deck. I've got so many Lenormand decks. I like them. They're simple, stupid. They don't tell you anything, but you see that ring? What does that indicate to you? That indicates marriage, engagement, contracts. It's a union. This is what this card means. And their little book, because they've got the smaller box, it's still a nice little box, and it will say contracts, unions, marriage. And they will even tell you if it pairs up with another card, let's say the house, you know, that means maybe you're buying a house. That's a contract for a house. And or maybe it's because you're getting married and moving to a new house. The interpretation is going to depend on the cards that are around it. But with these cards, they're a little bit easier. When you see flowers, you know it's going to be a good card. It's going to be a joyous occasion. Somebody's giving flowers. It just makes you think of something good. So even though you have to read exactly what it is in here, after a while it's going to be easy to remember because it's easy to look at that picture. An anchor is something that's weighing you down. They always, all the Lenormand decks always correlate to a card in the regular deck of cards. This one here would be the 9 of spades, which would equate to the 9 of swords. So it's sorrow, it's heartbreak, it's something heavy coming down on you. It's just another deck, and it depends on, like I said earlier, what your preference is for artwork and symbolism. This was like stars. This is a happy, hopeful card. I like Lenormand decks because they're simple and they're easy to define. And even if you don't have the book, you can look at the pictures and pretty well get the gist of what's going on. Now, with that being said, and there are so many Oracle decks, I can't even count them. I mean, they come out with a new one, I swear, every month. You can't keep up with them all. Now, how when you're using your cards, the simplest thing I can tell you is just remember that life is not predetermined, or I don't believe it is. We all have free will. And when you get a reading and it's showing you a series of events or telling you this has happened in the past, and this is what's happening now, this is what's going to happen in the future, sometimes you can alter that. It's not, like I said, set in stone because of our free will, what it all amounts to is people don't realize we live with a sea of possibilities, a sea of probabilities. When you're at point A and you're taking, let's say you're taking these steps A, B, C, D, and E. When you're doing a reading, it's like you're on A, B, maybe you're only, let's say you're at step C. Their cards are going to show you what D, E, and F look like because this is the way you're heading. However, if when you get to point C, you change your mind, you decide, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go over here. Because in this place, let's say you were headed towards the left and you were going down that road. You just made a new decision today that's you don't even realize yet. It's going to alter your future timeline. So now instead of going to, you're over here going 1, 2, 3. You just started here, moved to here, and because of a certain decision or choice you might have made that day, instead of following the path that the cards thought you were on, you just fooled them and went down another path. That's how free will works. I don't know how to say it. That's also the reason why sometimes the card readings seem half good, but then that didn't happen like they said they would. It didn't happen because somewhere along the line, you made a different choice. From the present moment you were in, you did something different. Maybe it's because you walked down the street and went a new way home. Maybe it's because instead of taking the bus, you took a cab. The cab ran into a light pole. You ended up in the hospital for a week, and now you never know what choice you make and that you're making it, how it's going to truly affect the outcome in the future. That's why if you feel like the reading wasn't right, it might have just been something you did, which is also another good thing to happen because sometimes if you have like a bad forecast and you don't want it, sometimes all you have to do is think things through in the moment and make a better choice because let's say your lifestyle or the way you're going is you're going down the wrong path. So from where you're at the day of your reading, you need to talk to yourself and get yourself back on track and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to go this way and try the other path. That will dissipate the bad thing from happening and open you up to a new possibility that might bring you more joy in life. And trust me, nobody's going to tell, oh my God, you're going to die. The readers don't do that. At least good readers don't. They're going to show you if there's something, if they see something that's not so hot, they'll say, well, it looks like there's going to be some problems ahead. If you do this and this is what the result looks like. So then just don't do this and that. Do something else. The choices are, oh, immeasurable. It's your life, and you can take any path you want. So don't ever let a reading or the fear of getting a reading put you off. Just if you get a reading and it isn't the best, then just know, well, what can I do to change that outcome? Talk to yourself, meditate on it. You know what your life is like, you know where you're making mistakes. Correct your mistakes and move on. Things always are brighter then. All right, got off track there. As always, I have a tendency to ramble. But that's it for our difference. The only difference between the cards is one follows a traditional basic, they're all the same suits, same layouts, different artwork nowadays, but basically the same meanings. And the oracle cards are anybody, whoever the author is, they are all different. They're all going to have different symbolism. They're all going to have different meanings. And it doesn't really matter that this guy who wrote this or this guy who wrote that isn't a powerful magician or a great psychic, because the power is in you. The intuition is coming from your mind, attaching to the force, to the universe, to the Akashic records. It's you working with spirit to get the cards to show you the way. And all you do is you pick the deck that makes you the happiest, the deck that you like the artwork in, the deck that you feel drawn to. Any deck will do. And that's about it, I guess, for today. We'll try something else next week. All right. Thank you for joining us here at CW Shop Talk. Bye bye.